Internet, hello you absolute lovelies. Let's talk all about X-Men 97 Season 2's finale, which ends in a way that sets up Season 3 to be a very different season than I was expecting. It actually uses seeds planted in one of the episodes I thought was like a left turn for tonal purposes and world building that actually was setting up a completely different world for the X-Men. We'll talk about that in a moment. Let's talk about the actual episode though before we get to the ending. This episode had to do a lot. It had to resolve X-Core. I don't quite think it necessarily nailed what X-Core is. We were watching this over at Royal Rejects, by the way, and that is something we both noticed. When X-Core exploded, it didn't feel quite like we had the resolution of the difference in that X-Team. I do think it effectively captured X-Factor versus X-Force, and we did get to feel some of that tension between the teams, but I do feel like this finale didn't quite resolve that third flavor of the X teams, and that was something I was hoping for. It did, however, give us a lot of reunion moments, a big culmination in fight, and a very different dynamic between Rogue and Gambit that I was expecting. Now, Gambit came back in the last episode, and obviously it was a return, but it was like an undead return. We had a lot of that ethereal, mystical darkness and tone and that undercurrent of voodoo you get in New Orleans, but also with the Thieves Guild and with those characters surrounding Gambit. So it was interesting to have him come back as that Salvador LaRocca art, that Chris Claremont era where he was that horseman, and to have him look that way 90% of the time. But then we see him return to human for a second, but they have to save him at the cost of taking out Apocalypse. How do you do that? We have that looming threat of what X-Force represents, which is mercenary at any cost, take out the mutant threat, and that's why they're so opposing to X-Factor. X-Factor is more of the cops. They're more of the people that are willing to rat out their kind in order to the greater good save mutants, whereas the mercenary side of X-Force is the ones that are willing to kill and take people out. Both extremes, both have their problems, but to see them working together was so interesting because Cable, of course, was going to betray them, but to see Cable shoot Gambit in the face was crazy, and of course that unleashed, once you take out that human element, it unleashed the rest of the celestial energy, bringing us Apocalypse. Now, a lot of people don't know the scope of the Celestials. A lot of people might not have seen Eternals, the MCU film, but Celestials and their power and their cosmic entities and their existential dread and ominousness, I think was really captured well in this episode, because not only do we see the power of Gambit when he's merged with Apocalypse, that Gambocalypse, but we also see what they can imbue Rogue with, that very powerful Rogue that is like Super Saiyan in that fight is all happening, and we think that's the end of Rogue. We have this incredible sacrifice, and we know that Rogue would sacrifice herself for Gambit, and we love these star-crossed lovers, but I was definitely very worried. It was effective storytelling that I was so worried about getting Gambit back just to lose Rogue. Is it going to be a Romeo and Juliet thing where one of them gets to make it? They both die, spoiler alert for Shakespeare, but is it going to be a star-crossed lovers thing where, you know, they can't ever be together and one is always mourning the other? The grief is always there as a couple because one has sacrifice for the other. So then we get a big reason why I think they've made such an effort to make Nightcrawler as awesome as he is in the comics in this season, because the man of faith himself sacrifices himself for Rogue because of their love, because of everything he sees in the two of them. A very interesting questions raised for me of, like, you know, if you believe in one true God, but you're talking to a celestial, this actual deity and creature, also like sacrificing yourself, does that count? Anyway, a lot of questions raised, but that moment of ominousness, I think they really captured the Celestials, the scope, the scale, the power, the enormity. The sound design was incredible. Really impressed with all that in animation, how much we were able to convey the enormity of the Celestials and their impact on the story and the narrative itself and the world in that narrative. So we get, obviously, through this battle, and then it culminates in kind of a where does it go from here moment, right? Like, we've got Cable having betrayed his X-Men. We've got X-Factor not sure where their allegiances lie. We've seen Polaris have to, you know, come back to the X-Men. She's always been an X-Men. She's had that truth, that anchor in her, seeing the X-Men as this one truth. But now we've got this moment where it's a lot of rebuilding. Not quite as much as season one, but like X-Corp is gone. They're not welcome and trusted in America. There's giant tensions rising with the X-Men. And I love that I wasn't sure where things would go. And I kept assuming, you've watched these videos presumably, I kept assuming it was heading towards Onslaught. And I thought that because the first 4 episodes really laid down the groundwork of, you know, Magneto using Cerebro dangerously. The Cerebro turning into danger is not quite tied to Apocalypse, but I thought they might use some of those elements, especially with Xavier using Magneto in his mind to try to forgive himself, whether there was like a fragment of Magneto. And if Xavier died, boom, right to Onslaught. So I really thought that's where the season was going to go, bringing us that blend of Magneto and Xavier's minds and Onslaught, setting up all of that for season 3. Instead, it takes a piece from that episode with Nightcrawler and Colossus, that Exodus episode, the episode that is dealing more with the ramifications of your children and how you raise them and how mutants have been abused and left to the side. And we get to see Creed basically saying that he was treated that way. Like, his parents are both mutants. He was the one that was jettisoned. And that commentary on like what we do as a society to people we don't care about and how parents treat their children says a lot about this family of, Mystique and Sabretooth. So that episode I thought was going to just be a commentary on Nightcrawler's goodness, on Colossus, and what it is to be thematically good. And instead, it was actually setting up for season 3, which is the stakes are so high with the X-Men. I should have seen this coming. But if the X-Men aren't even welcome in America, it gets worse if your president is Creed. So not only does Creed get elected president, but Mystique comes back, setting up all of that tension from this run, this era of X-Men, this Joe Madureira, Chris Pichello art era of X-Men. I think it's going to do very well. I'm very intrigued by such a politically toned show already, literally getting into a president kind of politics. We had a lot more politics in season 1 than season 2. This was more about, theology and belief and more, outside of those ideas. There were governmental ideas, there were regulation ideas between the X teams, but politically going full president and going Mystique and assassination, all those things. Very fascinating era of the comic books to read up on. So definitely didn't expect that for season 3, but it definitely looks like that's where we're going through that post-credit scene, and it does make sense. But we're going to be bringing Gambit back. This episode was very, very fast. It was like 24 minutes, but it did bring us Gambit back to scale. It did assemble a whole new team. We did meet so many characters this season. Season 3 could be a very big season as far as a cast of characters. We never did get Chamber talking, but Chamber did make the opening credits this episode. If you look at the season finale's opening credits, Chamber's running down the middle while we have the 2 opposing X teams on the sides. That excites me a great deal, but I'm curious what that means for which characters get their time in the sun. Does Beak get his moment? Do we get Glob? Do we get Goop? No, Glob. Do we get those characters as mainstays next season? Because we've already got like a roster of 20 X-Men between X-Factor, X-Core, X-Force. Very curious who is central to next season. I'd love to see more Storm. But yeah, Gambit's back. We know that much. I'm sure they're going to make a big deal of that, I hope. And this season has been a whirlwind. Doesn't quite hit the highs of season 1 for me personally. I consider season 1 like a nice A, like a feat of television. One of the great MCU installments, period. I know it's MCU adjacent, but I consider it like the bar. That and Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man season 1 are both like staggering. This one's like a good show. I think the last 2 episodes were in the C range, bringing the average down to like a B- for me. I'm still glad it exists. I still love spending these 9 half-hour segments with X-Men. I've still enjoyed spending 9 reviews with you discussing the X-Men. That's been fun, but I do think they had to cover a lot in 4.5 hours. I do think they bit off a lot of different trade paperbacks to cover per half hour. I think they covered a lot of ground, and I could have used at least 10 episodes, or I could have used a couple of the storylines getting, streamlined a bit. And they didn't really have a reason for Wolverine to get his adamantium back so quickly. There was a few things that just felt like, why are we doing this? And then by the end, I still feel that way. I didn't get an answer in the finals. So with the finale leaving me a little bit to be desired, it lands at about a B- for me overall as a season. But we've got Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man next. We've got Vision Quest at some point soon. We've got lots more MCU TV to come. And we've got a season 3 of X-Men. And then we've got X-Men theatrically soon in live action. So X-Men are just getting started again after years of hiatus. Other than, how many times the Fox stuff has cooked up a new project. We haven't had X-Men to this level of pop culture in quite a while. So I'm very excited about that. And it was great to spend time. Like, I love the Danger episode. It's cool to see the Brood. Love the first 4 episodes overall. And then it kind of zigzagged for me from there. So would love to know what you thought in the comments below. Would love for you to like this video. It helps the algorithm. Would love for you to subscribe. If you just watched me for 9 minutes, I hope you like what I have to say. I cover movies, I cover TV, and I cover a hell of a lot of comics. So if you like any of that stuff, hit that subscription bell. Let's talk about X-Men 97 in the comments below. And let's talk about just stuff. That's what YouTube's for. All right. Appreciate you guys. Bye.